Hey guys, welcome back to Rossoneri TV. I'm Joe and I'm here for a new live stream to speak about the latest AC Milan news. It is a very important week for Milan. Of course, we do have a midweek fixture against Bologna on Wednesday, and then on the weekend we are playing against Lazio. But besides the games, it is a very important week because or at least there seem to be some developments going on in terms of the final closing. And today I'll be speaking exactly about the details regarding this final closing. Of course, the closing has been postponed for various months, and we are still waiting for this final closing to actually take place. Just as a recallment, I would like to say that the final closing is set for March the 3rd for you guys that probably don't know or you don't really remember. So it's still set for March the 3rd, but there seem to be some reports recently, as I've read in previous days, that the closing could actually occur a bit before that, and that developments have already been made between Fininvest and Senior Europe so that this closing could actually arrive earlier. Whether I cannot really give you any confirmations on that, I would still like to speak about the details of what's set to come in this upcoming week in regards to getting a step closer to the actual final closing. Well, what we do know, like I said before, the final closing is set to be on March the 3rd, but it seems to be that this month, of course, the weeks prior to that date will be used to let really the people from China get into the groove, or at least get organized to set up some clauses that the two parties could possibly have together. We all know that there seemed to be some misunderstanding a lot of times between Fininvest and Sino Europe. For example, the decisions on certain players on whether or not they will be capable of coming to the team, or better not yet, they're just not capable of really coming to an agreement, these two parties at times. And we've seen it so many times. For example, Cáceres, I was reading some reports that apparently Galliani was actually willing to pay his demands, whatever he was demanding for in terms of salary. But on the other hand, the Chinese didn't want to do anything with it. And once again, they let that option out the door, just like they did with Orsolini at the beginning of the winter transfer window. But getting back to the actual closing, it seems to be that Fassone will be having some meetings in the next few days with the representatives of Fininvest to, of course, prepare for the final closing. And there seem to be some voices, according to this report that I've been reading, and this report is saying that they are very, very close to official sources at Milan. So I think it's particularly interesting to speak about these details. In terms of the money, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are pretty concerned, how much money will be put in Milan, how much money do Senior Europe have to pay in terms of finalizing this deal. Well, I'm going to be giving you all of those numbers at this point. So first of all, like we all know, Sino Europe still have to pay 320 million euros in order to close the deal for the final closing and take over the club. And also there will be 100 million being put in Milan's account. And what I mean by that is to cover up costs. I did mention a few months ago that Milan does have some costs in terms of fees, just club costs in general, transportation, lots of fees in general. And these fees were actually supposed to be paid last summer. And apparently these club fees were amounting to 60 million euros. So out of those 100 million euros that they're supposed to be giving to Milan, 60 million were to be allocated to the club's fees. Now, many of you are probably thinking, well, if 60 million are going towards the fees, what's left for the transfer windows? What's left for the summer transfer window, at least? Well, obviously speaking, out of those 100, if 60 went to the fees, 40 will be left for the transfer window, but these 40 were supposed to be put in the winter transfer market. This is what the voices are being said right now. This is what they're stating. The 40 million were supposed to be put in the winter transfer market, of course, if the closing arrived in December. And it didn't arrive in December. It actually got postponed. If you guys recall what happened 2 months ago, it got postponed to March, and that's why the 40 million euros that they were supposed to get for the winter transfer window never actually came in. So those 40 million are still there. We're going to be able to use those 40 million in the summer transfer window. But what's more important is that the Chinese are supposed to put in another 100 million euros once the final closing actually takes place. So 100 million that they're supposed to put after the closing takes place, plus the 40 million that was supposed to be allocated for the winter transfer window, makes up the sum of 140 million euros. This is exactly the amount of money that Milan will be spending in the summer transfer window, or at least will have at their disposal, which is a lot of money. Some people were already getting an idea that it was around this money what we're supposed to getting. I always thought that it was about 100 million, but it seems to be that it's actually going to be more. So 140 million seems to be the amount of money that we're going to have available to spend this summer. That is really a lot of money. Definitely, we're going to need this money in one way or another. It's something that should be sufficient in order to put this team back on the tracks. And I think it's mandatory to really spend this type of money, because if we're only going to have 40 to 50 million, it's simply not going to do the deal, because we all know nowadays how much players cost. We all know nowadays that if we don't pay a lot of money for players, specifically, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but specifically if a team is not playing in Europe, they're going to want even more money. We all know these things. So, you know, with 50 million euros, you just can't do much nowadays in football in terms of actually buying quality certainties. But 140 million, you could get yourself a couple of good players, definitely. And I definitely hope that this money gets invested, especially in the midfield, as we haven't been able to buy any concrete midfielder, any midfielder with quality, which I still don't understand why. It has been so many years that we haven't really seen one. So I definitely hope that that's one major department in which we do end up investing in, and we do end up putting in these funds. And also, I think some defensive certainties need to be added to this team as well. So I definitely hope that there is an input in funds for the defensive department, preferably maybe a center back for Milan. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, though, regarding the final closing. I know a lot of you guys are very, very skeptical about the whole thing, and I don't blame you. This thing has been postponed for many, many months. Every time it seems like we're almost close to a deal, out of nowhere, it gets postponed. So I honestly don't blame you guys if you're not really optimistic about the whole situation. I personally think that it's finally going to happen. I see a different attitude going on between Fininvest. They're actually preparing ahead of time so that, you know, this time will actually be the right time to finalize everything. And I think the Chinese know exactly what they need to do. And a lot of people were also telling me, you know, is there the possibility that the Chinese will back out of this? Personally, I just don't think so, because you know, they have already invested 200 million. They have already allocated 200 million towards the sale of the club back in December and in the summer, if you guys remember that. And, you know, also they have agreed to pay the club's costs and fees, like I said before. So there's just no reason as to why Sino Europe will be backing out of this. All I hope is that it gets finalized by that date, March 3rd, Judgment Day, really, because I just can't imagine Milan not being able to invest in quality players this summer. Everyone knows what Milan needs. Everyone has seen the problems that this Milan team has on a daily basis, and those problems have been even more evident since the start of 2017 as players got injured and the team in general became more predictable. So on that note, let me know exactly what your thoughts are on the whole situation, whether the final closing will finally be taking place, and also where do you think Milan maybe should be investing with those 140 million, which department? So let me know all of those thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll be reading them throughout the rest of the live stream. Y says, hopefully this is the last season of mediocre and panic buys. And I completely agree with you on one condition there, because unfortunately, Milan, it's not like we never really had the funds to invest proper money. If you guys recall, Bertolacci was 20 million. We could have definitely got someone else for that money. Even Jose Sosa, spending 7.5 million euros on him. I'm not saying that because of his recent performances, but was it really a smart purchase when we considered Jose Sosa, a guy that, didn't do very good things when he was at Napoli and not to go play in the Turkish league to gain his fame? Like I said, no disrespect towards the guy, but these are panic buys, like you mentioned there, Why? It's just ridiculous that we have to still make these purchases with the hope that these players turn out to be something that they're initially not supposed to be. What I mean by that is that Jose Sosa was supposed to be this experienced older player that was inputted in the squad, that was supposed to deliver some quality and so forth, but he never really did. Even when he got the occasion to play, the guy has lack of ideas, stuff like that. And I could definitely name you more players than that. I'm sure you guys all know exactly what I'm trying to say here. But we definitely need to make purchases, smart purchases, because just because we have 140 million euros to spend in the summer when the final closing arrives, doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be making all the smartest of purchases, because we have seen it, and God knows how many transfer windows we had the money, maybe not as much, but we made stupid purchases. For example, that 20 million towards Bertolacci, which I personally wouldn't have ever made. Reading on, Sebs SK says, Gio, how do you think we should distribute 140 million in the summer? Which position should we invest the most? Definitely, like I said, the midfield is number one priority in my eyes. There's just way too many problems in that midfield. You can't just depend everything on Locatelli in that middle. The only real other certainty that I could possibly say on top of my head in that midfield is definitely Kuchka, because he has done such a big job in that midfield, even defensively and physically. And he's also scored, I think, 3 or 4 goals this season, which I personally wasn't expecting. So besides Locatelli and Kuchka, maybe Pasalic if we do end up buying him in the summer, which I don't think should cost much. Really, all the other players are at average. I don't really see these players like Jose Sosa or Bertolacci being there for the future of Milan. These are players that, in my opinion, are easily replaceable with the right funds and with the right mentality, and actually making smart signings rather than spending money that you had on average players like I just mentioned. Italian Football TV, how you guys doing? Forza Rossoneri TV. Hope everything is good with you guys, Marco and Mike. Anikat says, Gio, we should be bullish in buying players. First offers should be made more closer to market value instead of bidding low and inviting competition to drive up the prices. This is a point that I actually agree with you on there, Aniket. I think a lot of times we are always trying to get the better of the deal. What I mean by that is we're trying to, always try to get a player that's not supposed to be worth less than what we're actually offering, to get some benefits, some added benefits in it. No team in professional football is stupid enough to accept deals where you're not paying enough for a player. It's like I remember the whole situation with Axel Witsel a few summers ago. You guys could probably all remember all the problems that we were having with Zenit and their president, where so many times, we had to offer less. Zenit was asking for just a bit more, and for just 2 or 3 million, we couldn't close the deal. Like, to me, that is absolutely ridiculous. Why do we always tend to have those, tendencies of offering less than what the player is actually worth, trying to get the better deal? I'll never understand, but that, I guess, is Galliani's mentality. But moving on forward, we cannot just offer teams less than what those players are actually worth. We need to make proper bids, and also to push aside competition from other teams, like you mentioned there, Aniket. Because every time we are interested in a player, we always know that there's 2-3 other teams interested as well, and these teams will actually be willing to pay the requested amount from the teams that they're purchasing from. So we need to be more ethical, I guess we have to say. Pasolo says we need 2 more creative mids. Bacca needs to go so we can get a modern striker like Lapadula, but better. We need a good defender with Romagnoli, backup fullbacks, and by Pasalic and Deulofeu. I definitely agree with a lot of your points there, specifically with the Bacca and Lapadula situation. Now, I know a lot of you guys are possibly thinking, what is going on with Bacca and Lapadula? And I've been mentioning it over and over again. I did mention that the problems at Milan seem to lie defensively, at least in the past month, where we conceded so many goals. But a lot of people also don't take a look at another main root of the problem, and that is our attack. I've read a frightening statistic where I think out of the last 7 goals or something like that, or in the last 7 games, Bacca and Lapadula only amounted to 3 goals, which to me, it's certainly not enough. Take a look at teams like Juventus, where you got guys like Dybala or Higuain scoring more than that in those amount of games. I think they're all having a rough spell at the moment, and the team performances, even though Montella says that the performances are pretty good, it's just that the results that we're not getting, I agree to disagree, I guess, because yes, the performances have not been the worst. I could agree on that fact. But still, many times we are being way too predictable, and teams have figured us out inside and out, really. They know exactly how we play, and to me, that seems to be a major problem. But getting back to that striker problem, Bacca, every time he seems to be getting the ball, he's having problems in stopping the ball or even managing to create a chance out of nothing. To me, you're a player that's worth 30 million, at least that's what everyone says. You cannot be making mistakes like that. You're being paid for what your job entitles you to do, and you're simply not doing it. And then you got a guy like Lapadula that we paid 10 million for, which every time he comes on, he seems to have that little extra incentive to do well. And simply, that makes no sense to me. Why does that happen? Bacca did apologize today to Montella and the rest of the team, and he did say that, he needs to work harder, his head needs to be in the game, and so forth. But like I definitely like to say, actions speak louder than words, and a lot of times we've heard talk, not only from Bacca or Montella and so forth, but when it came to see what this team was actually made of on the pitch, these guys were simply not doing it. They were talking, but the actions weren't there. So that's why, sometimes actions speak louder than words, and that's exactly what Milan need to do. If they say they're going to be playing better, they need to do it. They need to show. They need to prove to the fans that they're actually serious about all of this. Messi Jovi says, is the Chinese deal done? No, it's not yet done. I did update you guys though with some developments that seem to be occurring in the next few days, at least, with Fininvest and Fasone and the Chinese. So yes, it's still not yet done. Sebs SK says, Jill, do you think we should all out for quality players like Verratti or get some high potential players for the same transfer fund? I think we need a mix of both, you know. In terms of high potential players, I think we have a couple at the team already established. When you look at Donnarumma, Locatelli, Bertolacci, yeah, of course. Donnarumma, Locatelli, Romagnoli. You know, when you take a look at these players, they're all players with high potential already, and we even have other youngsters out there, not only in the main team but also from the Primavera. You got guys like Andres Lamas, Luca Vido, that's out on loan now at Cittadella. You got Patrick Cutrone. So we have definitely a lot of high potential players at the club. Whether they'll be given the chances or not, that remains to be seen with Montella. But in my opinion, we need quality players like Verratti, for example, like you mentioned. That's one name, but there's definitely a lot of other names out there. What we need is those quality players, those players that will be playing and will be giving you the results, will be giving you the certainties. You know that even though the team is going to be playing bad on one day, you know these guys could save the situation and make you win games out of nothing. Much like Juventus, for example. Juventus is not a team that plays good on every given week. If you take a look at their games, a lot of games they play, I wouldn't say mediocre, but less than their potential. Either way, they're capable of finding a way to win almost, 90% of the time. And why is that? It's because they have quality players that could change the game around. Players that could score goals at any moment, even though the team is not performing well. They have these quality players that could turn games around, where Milan simply doesn't have these types of players, or at least very, very few. What I mean by that is that when the team in general performs very poorly, that's going to be an indicator of what the team in general is going to be doing for the rest of the game. There's not going to be a breakout performance. Very rarely have we seen, subs coming in and having an impact, besides the fact of Lapadula being scoring some goals off the bench. We haven't really seen guys coming off the bench and giving such an immediate impact to the team. That's the main difference, and these are the things that we need to change, especially in the next transfer window when we do get the money. Hey Blake, how you doing? He says Bacca is not the right forward for Milan tactics. Kayo says, why is Montella so obsessed with the 4-3-3 formation? He has become so predictable now that the other teams have figured us out inside and out. I did speak a bit about Montella's tactical decisions yesterday in the match review, but I'm willing to make a separate video, maybe sometime later this week, to speak specifically about formations and Montella style of play. What could suit Milan better in these moments of pure, how can I say it, pure prediction. Because that's exactly what it's been. It's been a very predictable team. So I'm definitely going to be making a separate video to speak all about that, which should be coming later this week. Football Bro says 4-3-3, stick to it now. What do we want to change now? That's BS that they figured us out. Juventus stick to the 4-3-3. Are they getting predictable? They're not sticking to the 4-3-3. They played different formations. They played the 3-5-2, which are capable of playing. They're capable of playing the 4-3-3 like you mentioned. They're even capable of playing a 3-4-3. Juventus is not a team that sticks to one formation. They've changed several times throughout the course of the season, actually. If you watch their games, you'll be able to tell that right away. So yeah, they're definitely not a team that sticks to one formation. But besides the fact of the formation, you can play whichever formation you want. If you have the same tactics at the end of the day, what I mean by that, the same predictability, even though you're playing a 3-4-3 and you have the wingers making the same movements and the same style of play, at the end of the day, it's really not going to matter which formation you play. It's the tactics that count, how you move throughout the formation that really makes a difference. Also, another problem says, why is shifting the Deadwood out? Who will buy them and would they want to leave? Yeah, that's another problem. I know we have a few players like that, like Honda, Poli, Zapata, and so forth. I think little by little these players will be leaving. Even for cheap, I don't think it should be a major problem to get rid of these players. But I still think that we definitely need to get rid of these players, even if it's for cheap, or just let their contract run out. That's another thing, and they will become free agents. But I think the only player that's contract is running out this year is Honda, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not quite sure about the others. I could check for you if you want regarding players like Poli and Zapata. But I'm looking at Poli right now. He has a contract until 2018, so he's going to be at the club for at least another year, unless he moves somewhere on loan and then he returns to Milan and we terminate his contract. Zapata, on the other hand, still has a contract for another 2 years until 2019, which I personally don't understand how this guy is capable of staying at Milan for my apologies, for 7 years, because this guy has been here since 2012, and it's incredible how he's going to be capable of playing 7 years at the club. Geek 101 says, do you think Montella will last the rest of the season? I hope so, but I'm worried we go all rash and sack him. I think Montella is definitely staying. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people are saying that Montella will be getting sacked. I honestly don't think so, unless we go on a 10-game losing streak, which I don't see happening. Montella will be staying at the club. Even Galliani, Fassone, Mirabelli at a meeting earlier today at Casa Milan, and they reconfirmed Montella. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Once again, he keeps on saying this sentence, which is, the performances are there. We're doing well in the performances. It's just the results are not coming. I could partially agree with that, because yes, we are doing well. We're not doing too bad, but we need to finish our chances, and we never finish our chances for some reason. Yesterday, Sampdoria, one chance they had, or max 2 chances. I think they had one in the first half where Donnarumma made a great save. And the other one, the penalty shot, that's all they had last game. That's all they had yesterday. And they still ended up with the 3 points. So, it's all about, finishing your chances as well. Because Milan did get a couple of chances, especially at the end. One with Deulofeu winning the post. The other one with Lapadula should have finished it. Viviano made a crazy save. But at the end of the day, it's you gotta finish your chances. Definitely gotta finish your chances. Ruthwick says Donnarumma will not move out. I'm sure of that. Arshia says I'll take 5th at this point. That was actually my prediction at the beginning of the season. I said that Milan, what a realistic position would be for them to finish in is 5th. Wednesday, just before I sign off, Wednesday will be a very, very important game. I think that this is one of the most important games of the month, actually, because this is the game in hand that we need to win at all costs. It will be a disaster if we lose this game or actually drop points against Bologna. I'll be speaking all about it in the match preview tomorrow, but this is really one of the main chances that Milan has this month to make up some ground on the competitors that are right in front of them. And of course, later on we are playing Lazio and Fiorentina, which will also be decisive games this month. But starting off with the Bologna game, this is definitely a game that we need to get the 3 points. I'll be speaking all about that though tomorrow in the match preview. Mikael says Montella needs to be better too. He needs to improve as a tactician. Maybe a few more comments before I sign off. Walls13 says there's no reason to sack Montella because it's not his fault that the injuries happen, which lead to bad performances. I agree with you on the fact that injuries happen, but this goes back to the thing that I mentioned in December and January, where I said there's a major lack of depth at the team, and this will hurt our chances in the long run. I didn't say that we will be having all these injuries, but if you guys recall what I mentioned at the beginning of January, I said that a lot of these players will get tired out and they won't be able to play on every week, on a weekly basis. Some players were already seeing the fatigue of that, like we saw with Locatelli. and Jose Sosa is obviously his backup, which is not a good backup. And then obviously those terrible injuries to Descio, Antonelli, which I still don't know how long he's going to be out for, and Bonaventura, all players that usually start games, and we're going to have to do without them, at least for a few weeks. Bonaventura for the entire season there. But this just proves to be that the lack of depth is really what we were missing. And unfortunately, all these players will have to really roll up their sleeves for the rest of the season, because I'm pretty sure that they won't want to throw out that amazing first half of the season they had just because of a few injuries. They know they're going to need to work harder. They're going to have to put extra work tougher altogether. But if that's what it takes to get the results, and if they really want to make it to Europe next season, well, they know exactly what they need to do. And stop whining, stop complaining that they're not getting enough playing time, stop complaining about getting subbed off if they're not performing well. This is professional football. This is what you're getting paid for. You're paid to provide results. You have to provide those results, or else you're going to be sitting on the bench and you're going to be rotting on that bench. That is the bottom line of this team and what I'm expecting from now on until the end of the season. That's gonna wrap it up for today's video, guys. Thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, as well as subscribing to Rossoneri TV to stay updated with everything going on at the club on a daily basis. Tomorrow, I'll be back for the match preview of the Bologna game. And on Wednesday, of course, the live stream watch along followed by the match review. I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow. This has been Gio, signing off from Rossoneri TV. And as always, Forza Milan!